It's like
We are alive, kind of.
life. This is like writing. You don't know what's going to happen, but you know you have to type and keep going, right?
Exactly. And
So that's what we're meeting.
yeah, and I think that's one of the insights. The most important thing is just to open the computer to start writing, and something will happen and come out.
Yeah. I was telling to what I was traveling last week that people usually looking for clarity and looking for what's there. Like when you get in a flight, you know that you're going to arrive to a particular city, right? So you have a plan. But when it comes to writing and many other things in life, actually, we should opt for getting lost, not to find the place.
And it's
And that's why we struggle a lot. Now, in my research, I say that people are looking for what are the step one, two, and three that look like clarity and structure, but instead they need to embrace no, you have to get lost, and then you're gonna find the solution.
and it's so funny that you're saying that because I'm terrified of getting lost in general.
Really?
So yeah, I cannot read Google Maps. So I have the impression that I can read Google Maps, but I always walk in the wrong direction at first.
Hmm.
And before going for a run somewhere, I really take hours to study the map because I don't like to run with my phone. So the idea of getting lost is already crazy. And I realize it now with the writing, it's exactly that. Um, that I start running and then I realize, oh, I'm lost, and then I panic, and then I really need to calm down my entire nervous system. Yeah.
I had a good lesson like many, many years ago in which I actually got lost for real in the Patagonia, right? In the middle of nowhere, and it was turning dark. I couldn't find my way back. And I had to basically realize that, hey, I'm lost and accept that rather than try to find the way back and say, well, I'm going to settle and try to survive the night. It was snowing. I didn't have any kind of clothes to actually warm me. And then I realized that there was a place that was full of mountain lions. So to add to it. But what I had to deal with was like accept that being lost is a thing, no? Like instead of fighting it, and if I fought it, I could get killed. So the risk actually, in retrospect, was harder to or larger to fight getting lost versus embracing it. And
Surrendering.
since then, for me, like getting lost is, I like it. I think that we need to embrace.
A
So I
metaphor.
go
Yeah.
biking without direction until I don't know where I am, and then I find my way back to where I started. And that's a good kind of state of mind.
I like that. And over the past 2 months being here in Australia, I've more and more embraced that. So getting lost on purpose, basically.
Hmm.
And I realized that it's difficult. So there is a part of surrendering. And I like that. And I think especially nowadays, where we don't control anything anyway. And so the concept of getting lost and the mindset of getting lost is an important one.
Hmm.
So how did
Did
it
we
end?
ever? Did we ever control anything?
Um, that's true, that's true. And I think every generation believes that it's been the worst so far.
Mhm.
How did you get back in Patagonia? Don't leave me hanging.
The next morning, when everything clear, I started going back, and there was a rescue team like looking for me, and we found each other halfway. But then I realized all the dangers that I thought there were that actually were there, but I didn't know. And they told me like, so what one of the things I did is try to create a refugee, cutting branches and create like a something where I could sit from time to time to make sure I didn't got frozen because of the war. So I need to create some kind of cushion between the floor that was all snowy and cold, but also couldn't get to sleep because if you sleep, you die. So I had to stay awake and keep myself like
Oh,
comforting myself until I stood awake for, I don't know, 10 hours, whatever it was. And no, don't panic. You know, like if you panic, you're gone. So that was
yeah. Wow. What a lesson for life. Yeah.
was fun. Because I can tell about it if you don't do it.
Yes. Yes. And it's what I also find interesting is there are two, because this is basically a traumatizing event, and there are two possible outcomes. It's either you don't dare to get lost anymore and everything is planned and you don't leave without your GPS. Or, as you just said, when you go for a bike ride, you first get lost for half time and then you find your way back. So I find this very interesting. So yeah, way to your growth mindset.
Oh,
Oh.
how's your book coming?
I hoped you wouldn't ask.
Let's switch the topic on.
An
I'm asking you
accountability
so you don't
call.
ask me. You know what I mean? Like,
I was about to ask you. You were first. It's very interesting. I went on a personal growth retreat, not last weekend, but the weekend before, and just realized that I haven't written a single word since I came back.
hmm,
So I felt bad for a moment, and then I realized that I actually did some deep thinking since then, and came up with one big knot in my brain again that I had to resolve, similar to the
hmm,
one we discussed 2 weeks ago with the VUCA and the generations.
yeah.
I had another one where I was suddenly realizing that the history of professionalism is all about the professions. So
Yeah.
the lawyers, the medical doctors, the engineers, the teachers, and protecting their expertise for the higher good of society. So the focus is
Hmm.
always on individual autonomous professions. But when we speak about professionalism nowadays, and the focus of my book has been pretty much on corporates. So they're like, how come that anyone in a corporate worries about professionalism, although there are no professions? Um, so this,
Yeah, and I was thinking about the officialism because in the end, it's not about the professions, about the ground rules to be and show up at the office, right?
exactly, it's this kind of corporate culture. Um, and then So I got really stuck. I'm like, okay, so what am I writing about? Am I writing about entrepreneurs, freelancers, and the real professionalism, air quotes real? Or am I speaking about corporate professionalism? But what is this in the first place? And then I realized that there's been some research done on that before. And So in the 80s was the first time that a sociologist wrote about the craziness of corporates taking over the concept of professionalism and turning it basically into a cage to keep their employees intact and the bureaucracy running.
Mhm.
So that was kind of comforting that
It's a form of control, let's say,
exactly,
right?
exactly. And that's basically exactly what I'm writing about.
So
You,
maybe your book is about liberation.
yes,
Then,
yeah. So, and I did print everything that I had written. So it's about almost 50 pages. And it was
uh-huh.
good to just go through the printouts and taking notes there and seeing what needs to be redone. So I think my next 2 weeks, I'm flying back home today. Um, and then my next 2 weeks will be really to rewrite the first part so that I resolve all my hairballs in my brain.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah,
yeah, we think writing is easy. It's hard, sorry, but then in the end, when you have to edit, you realize that writing is easier. Editing sucks, right?
yes. Yeah, and I think I've been procrastinating this rewriting bit because yeah, it's painful. It's like, um,
Hmm.
so yeah, but clarity has to come first, and then the writing will be easier, I think. So I've been sitting with all these hairballs in my brain.
Oh.
How about you?
And when you were reading the things that you printed out, any like paragraph that say, wow, this is it, or
Mm,
anything that say, this is not where I want to take the book, because it's like being on that large corridor with lots of doors, and we just start choosing which one are we gonna go through and which we should like avoid,
yes.
right? So we don't get lost.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so there were a few like, what are you doing here? Paragraph.
Who invited you to this conversation, right?
It's as if this kind of small blog post about something totally different sneaked in. I'm like, I also want to have my place here. You leave now. So yeah, so there were a few of those. And then there were some parts where I was like, oh yeah, that's strong.
Mhm,
Um, and there was one chapter that is rather in the second part of the book that I really like and fell in love with again. So that's good. But I think the majority were that I had some strong thoughts, but then I didn't go enough into depth. So I think, yeah, now I want it's like a little bit like a gold digger. Okay, so what are the elements that really um, that are essential for the idea of the book, and how to bring a little bit more substance to them.
mhm,
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and I think and after the retreat, the first thing that I did was sitting down and thinking, okay, so why do I want to write this book? What is the essential idea of the book? Come again to the core and not to get lost in tangents and ideas of other writers.
And what's the answer? What's
Um,
the legacy you want to create with this book? Like,
I think it's an invitation to yeah for freedom to break out of this hamster wheel is to first pause and say, okay, so let's look at what we're doing here. This is crazy. Um,
Mm,
and how can we do it differently? And I think this then applies for employees and self-employed alike, because the freelancers and the entrepreneurs now, they buy into the corporate professionalism again for no reason,
mhm.
or just to stand out. And I think, yeah, it all leads to imposter syndrome, loneliness, burnout. And I think looking at the bigger picture and the crazy world we are living in, um, maybe we can stop making ourselves miserable for once. Um,
Yeah. I was reading a recent study that even ChatGPT is suffering from imposter syndrome. Kidding. That's soon to come, right? You know what I'm saying? Like even the technology can is
cannot cope, cannot cope with its own. Yeah, love it.
not really so pervasive that even technology is gonna get into that, right? Like what does it to be professional for an AI age?
Yes, yes. Professional AI. I love it. Yeah. So yeah, that's
Well, it would have been interesting. Imagine that if you have asked ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, that question, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years ago versus now, that and how they would answer. I mean, we can even do it hypothetical. Maybe ask them, hey, remember when you were recently
mm,
created? What was your idea of being professional? What's your idea of being and see if the AI has
ooh.
been manipulated by input from people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, expecting having all these
Yeah.
expectations of AI, yeah.
It's like
And
if you bring a human being from that hasn't been acculturated into this work world and you ask them about what's it mean to show up like a professional versus today, and that gap would be interesting, right? To compare notes.
very true, very true. I will ask. I will ask ChatGPT and realize that I think I need a name for my ChatGPT. We're collaborating too closely.
When you were exploring the thing that you printed out, you mentioned that there were some parts of it. Wow, this is great. This is. Was there anything that made it that connection? Like when you look back, why? What was the standard or the criteria, unconscious or not, that you were using, intentional for deciding what was wow versus get out of here?
Mm, I think it was a good mix between speaking from my heart, so something that
Hmm,
I had really observed and felt and lived, um, and speaking to a real problem.
mhm,
Um, the right balance of down to earth, experiential, but also the bigger idea, the kind of, oh yeah, that's actually an original thought. Um, yeah, and combining the anecdotes where I'm like, oh yeah, it's I can really speak to that because I've had an experience that exemplifies the point that I want to make.
hmm. So point. I was thinking that in my case, right? So it is different. Um, the pressure for being original, right? It's super critical. But then in that quest, we can always try to find what's different just for the sake of making it different or try to turn something that's not necessarily original into look like if it's original.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to focus more on the authenticity in the sense of is this something that I truly believe?
Hmm.
Is this who I am? Is this the way I roll? Because I can have original thoughts, but are not necessarily thoughts that I'm good embrace. So you know,
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm.
I was getting caught into this. I shared a couple of weeks ago one of the, it's not a chapter, but I presented like a chapter, still a draft. And a lot of people got caught up with the problem. They say, oh, I see this a lot of time. They were like, they empathize with what's going on.
Hmm.
But everyone's now looking for, give me what's the solution?
Ah,
And the
okay.
solution is not a solution, it's a journey. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
not like hey, you do one, two, three, boom, and you're done. Like, for example, the notion of disalignment debt. Well, we're never going to resolve alignment. Maybe instead of trying to look that people are aligned, we need to respect that we're never going to be aligned, but still we can work together because we think differently. So a lot of pressures that we have, like trying to understanding people. Do we
Hmm.
really understand people? I don't think so.
And it's funny because what comes back to my mind is the story of enjoying the fact of getting lost.
Hmm.
So, um, misalignment is kind of a collectively being lost because
Yeah,
everyone is on their own journey, and they cannot
definitely.
find their way together. Um, and I think and if I hear you correctly, then you're suggesting that we have to embrace and to surrender to it, that there will always be misalignment. Um, but then if
And
people,
misunderstanding and
yes,
whatever.
and isn't it, if people are buying your book or reading your book, and then you make them consciously aware
Hmm.
that there is something like that. Um, so what is then your proposition? Will you help them to embrace it and just to find their peace with it? Because I think we can find alignment, or we must find alignment, at least at the micro scale, until the next misalignment comes, right? Or oh, is it always an illusion of alignment because we can never jump into someone's brain to really see whether we are 100% aligned?
For me, in the end, we're looking more for commitment in the sense that we might not agree, but we're going to move forward, right? So one of the things that happens is that all the constructs in the team or workplace space come from a perfectionist standpoint, right? When we talk about
Mm,
we need to have a purpose, everything feels like too artificial and
mhm,
perfect. And then in real life, it never goes that way.
mhm.
So we think that successful teams never fight, never have conversations that like they're always perfect, they're always happy, they're always motivated, and that's not the real thing. And actually, tensions are what keep great teams together. We need to
Mm,
embrace them rather than try to remove tensions or friction. We need that creativity is our friction. No one writes a book in a sit down. You're gonna do like a lot of progress in 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks you're gonna throw your book away, and you're gonna feel that it's never gonna come to
yeah.
life. I need to start again. So I think understanding that and somehow connects to your being unprofessional. So it's a more realistic approach to life than one that's a perfect construct that we have been
Yeah.
told that that's how it's gonna work, and then it
And
never happens.
and it reminds me of Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety, where she found in her research that the high-performing teams um, are making more mistakes than other teams. And this is because they're reporting more mistakes, and hence more mistakes are
Hmm.
recorded as a statistic, whereas the lower performing teams are trying to hide their mistakes. So I wonder whether um, then thriving teams, they're more aware of the conflict, they're embracing more the conflict, so they ha need to have more of that and the misalignment because they make it. If you don't talk about the purpose, the goal, you don't even become aware of the misalignment.
Yeah, I think that it's not a one or, it's both things, kind of conversation. Also, when it comes to, I do a lot of work with culture and teamwork, and people usually think that either we are perfect or we suck. And usually they tend to think that they suck and the other teams are perfect. So one thing that I always tell them from the get-go is, okay, every team sucks, every team has great stuff, good stuff, and whatever, and we need to accept both the good and our team members. There are people that contribute great things, but they also maybe have a shitty personality or they have an ego, and it's not one or the other. You need to embrace both sides of each
Yeah,
contributor. And when they realize that and they can integrate both the good and the bad, then it's like, oh, they calm versus trying to focus only on what's broken or only on trying to preserve that illusion of perfection.
yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, and it's in the human nature that we want to control. We don't want to get lost. Want to
Mhm.
be perfect. Yeah. So what is the value proposition then of your book? What does someone get once they finished it in terms of
I think
insight?
you're going to get more open to exploring, more comfortable with uncertainty and getting lost, and also like a process that's not a perfect one, but at least something that gives you some, like I mentioned, like if you get lost, well, first of all, don't lose your mind because you're gonna get killed, right? So
Yeah.
like having like steps and things that you need to act upon, but those are lenses. So
Mm,
each situation is gonna be unique, and every time you're facing a new getting lost situation, you're gonna have to rethink how you deal with it. So
mm,
it's not like the growth mindset that you put a pill or you take whatever or a chip on your brain, and then all of a sudden you're learning. People are looking for that stuff. And I think that's the way the
yeah.
world works. So when someone is struggling, hey, you don't have a growth mindset. Well, that's like it's not that simple, right? And dismissing people and putting ourselves into the high horse, like, oh, I have an open mind. I'm gonna, I remember, and this is completely real, but I think it's a great example that we were doing some of the exercise, well, many of the exercise really challenging for people, and because they have to challenge themselves and talk about in front of their team members. And one person saying, I'm going to do that because I'm a very emotionally intelligent person. So I don't need to go through that exercise. But it's like first, I don't tell my wife, which I'm not, but the moment you start saying to someone that you are emotional
Yes,
intelligence, you have a problem. Sorry.
yes,
I
yes.
still get it. But second, you're inviting someone to be challenged, and the rest of the people who are not emotionally intelligent says, okay, I'm afraid, I'm panicked, but I'm gonna take the risk. But me, because I'm so on my high horse, I'm not playing.
Wow,
So I
wow.
say, okay, perfect. I hear you. First of all, I didn't know that being emotional intelligence basically releases you from being a team member. That's okay. But then if you don't want to play, you don't play at all. So don't leave the room. So either you stay and play or no, no, I don't want to leave. No, you cannot have it all. And she had to leave the room.
She left.
Well, because I told her
Yeah,
either you stay and play
yeah, yeah. And
or you don't stay.
I totally agree. I would
So
have thought that maybe she
both
stays.
sides,
Nice.
I'm gonna be an observer. No, no. Are you a team player? I'm the observer. I'm facilitating
Yeah, yeah. I think you cannot be a tourist in a
in
team.
your own life.
Yeah, in your own life. Yes, yes, yes. Um, and
But those are the things that
mhm,
I don't know if you connecting to that's the thing that I want to like.
yeah.
We don't need labels to
Mm.
believe that we are more open than other people when everyone's lost. So let's accept that we're all lost.
Yes, yes, hooray. Yeah. It's beautiful. That's where our books maybe connect, right? This surrendering to, okay, let's accept that we are human. We haven't figured it out and won't figure it out because it's too fast. And one thing that comes to my mind was what you're saying and the concept of depth um, is that um, in economics, debt is not a bad thing. You need to have you need to have a debt in order to invest because you believe that the investment will have a higher return. Um, and it would be almost stupid to invest from your savings. So I wonder whether this reframing of the concept of debt as a bad thing could also work um, in your framework, which was
Yeah,
just a thought.
I'm jumping around in 20,000 directions now. Eh, I'm thinking that maybe there's debt, but there's debt that you accumulate or carry intentionally.
Hmm.
Either because, for example, I could have some conversational debt with Miriam because I don't care about Miriam, which that's not true, right? But you're
Hmm.
investing on someone else's conversation, or maybe the context is not worth it for you to take that risk, but you're intentionally doing that. Or maybe
Mm,
you're withholding something until, I don't know, and then you
yeah,
invest or whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of avenues there for sure.
yeah.
You rock.
Just random thought, because I think if it's about shifting paradigms and thinking a little bit outside the box of, okay, so then yeah.
Yeah, and also to your point, I mean, one thing I was already in there that the debt never, it's not that you eliminate the debt
Mm,
100%, right?
yeah.
And what's the one that carries the worst return or not? Which one piles up the most or whatever,
Yeah, and the and why are we carrying the debt? I had over the past 2 weeks, I had a lot of difficult conversations. Um, and where I did the hard thing of speaking my truth and setting boundaries, but coming from a place of yeah, care and transparency, and realized how difficult it is because we it's so easy to hear what we want to hear. So I was
Mhm.
someone asked me to revise their website and and was looking forward to a deep conversation. And I replied, I'm very happy for your project, and um, I cannot commit to revise your website and to have these deep conversations because I have other priorities at the moment.
Yeah.
So stating my boundaries. And that person got clearly upset.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm being ironic here. Why? Like,
Uh,
because they assume that you don't have anything to do and you're at their service, and right?
and so this is how I interpreted it. Um, and they thought, oh, I'm not even worth,
Your time.
yeah, my time or a quick look or whatsoever. Um, and then I took the time to reply to their email to state that, okay, I can see that you're frustrated. And now I feel sad because I have the impression that my you don't respect my boundaries. I was actually hoping that you would be okay with me setting my boundaries, that I have different priorities. And then as it turned out, they said, "Oh, of course I respect your boundaries," but I felt dismissed. Like, oh, so apparently we
As
both
long
had.
as they include my work, right?
And then to cut a long story short, it ended up me or us acknowledging that we both had our share in this conversation, where I was maybe too dismissive in my first email because don't tell me what to do and don't expect me to invest my time. And they were just
Yeah,
so excited about their project that they didn't realize how much they're asking for. So
exactly.
I think this sometimes how much debt do we accumulate consciously or unconsciously just because we don't take the time to see the other person's perspective? So
Mhm.
it's like the
But the point
small,
is, like, sometimes there are two things. No, one is people request something, always minimizing it. That, oh, it's gonna take you 2 minutes, and actually, that's a full day or half a day job. But also interrupting. And then when it comes to priorities, I've been through something similar. It feels that you are dismissing the other, but you really have a choice. So if the ask doesn't match that choice, you have to say no.
yeah, and I can either dismiss myself or dismiss someone else. And it took me almost 42 years to come to a point that I am worth not being dismissed by myself.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm actually quite proud of that. But then I think it's really in how we are having these conversations because when they replied, "Oh, I'm shocked," I'm shocked and disappointed. I could have also just dropped it, not reply, and think "Pff, they don't respect my boundaries. Full stop. I don't want to interact. Um,
But shocked, why? I mean, I want to get into it, but like overall, like, because this is a common scenario, right? That people request something,
mhm.
assuming that you're gonna say yes.
Yeah,
So were they shocked that it wasn't a priority or that you said no?
I think both. Shocked that they would feel dismissed. And then it's their story, right? It's their shit. It's not my shit. If you feel dismissed by me setting a boundary and saying that that I'm prioritizing other things in myself, it's not against the other person. So if they take it personally, it's not me. And
So if that's the case, maybe they shouldn't ask. They say, you need to do this for me. The moment you ask, you always have a
yes,
chance to
yeah,
yes, no,
yeah,
or maybe.
absolutely. And all of this to say that I think that these are the kind of conversations that accumulate depth
Mhm.
without us even noticing it. Because we're misinterpreting, we're misaligned, we read something into the words, um, and then we either dismiss it or we don't take the time to actually find out what it's all about. Because at the end, after the two or three email exchanges, as we found out, um, I felt disrespected, air quotes. Um, because someone expects me to invest my time in reviewing their things without even asking me.
Yeah.
Um, and they felt, air quotes, disrespected or dismissed because I didn't even consider it. So were just hurt. And at the
It's
end,
interesting.
we concluded with, um, thank you so much for, we learned something from it, and left with a stronger connection, respecting both of our boundaries. Um, and I
So that
didn't,
happened.
yeah,
Ah, good, good.
yeah,
That was a good resolution
yeah.
then. So,
And I remember that a year, maybe even half a year ago, I would have then said, okay, let me have a look, because I would have felt bad conscious or whatsoever. And like this, we found a resolution without me doing any work that I didn't want to do and still respecting each other. And I think
hmm,
that's, for me, that was a beautiful example of that it's possible to come to a conclusion in a very respectful way, just acknowledging that, yeah, we both have hopes and sensitivities. Um,
as they say, hope is not a strategy, right?
what?
No, people hope that things are going to happen. They're not going to happen just because you think they should, right?
Exactly, exactly. Um,
Yeah, I think that, and once again, of course, we are writing different books, but there have some topics, some layers at some point that they connect. So I was thinking the maybe the expectation comes from you are a professional,
mm,
right? You're a giver, you're an expert, you have a lot of deep thinking, you're a facilitator, blah blah, and generous. So the expectation, because that's your professional persona, is that
hmm
you're gonna give feedback on a website to, no? Like spend 10 hours navigating, reading all the copy, making some, I don't know.
yeah. Yes. And I think
And
that's
if you say no, then you look like dismissive.
mhm,
Like that's what I'm saying. It's black or
mhm.
white. You know, it's like
Yeah,
either you're a good person, a good professional, or you suck. You're dismissive.
yeah. That's true. And I think that's something that I haven't, that I'm sometimes reminded of. As a podcast host, I am in people's ears a lot, and they build a relationship to me and have the impression that we're friends because they know me so much, so well, but they forget that I don't know them. So, um, yeah. And then it's easy to reach out to a friend and to ask them, but they forget that it's a one-sided friendship, basically.
That's a good point. But also maybe they don't even ask their so-called friends because your friends will tell I don't have time to I don't care about your website. You know, like they work in another industry, like you see what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like
yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of kind of wrong expectations. So I have sometimes calls from potential clients, and sometimes they end into I'm talking about a large corporation, right? Multi-billion business that wants to have a call to get free advice. They want you to, I have the kind of, and when you say thank you, but they get upset because, well, you share a lot of stuff, so why wouldn't you give me, why would you just fix my issue? Like, for what?
Because I am already sharing a lot of stuff.
Exactly. But you know, one thing that for me helped, the same as establishing like a, well, it's not a priority, one criteria, because sometimes not everyone reacts well to this, but some people at least get it. I said, look, why would I give you something that I'm giving to a paid client?
Mhm.
So it's not about me, but I would be betraying my relationship because this client is paying me for that kind of advice. So I would never give it to you for free
Yeah, yeah,
because then I would be abusing my paid client. So some people resonate with that and say, oh, okay, I get it.
yeah,
So it's less about me, it's about I'm showing that I have a criteria standard and being consistent.
And I would almost go a way further that you're betraying everyone who is benefiting from your free content because you do need the paid clients in order to sustain the work that you're doing for free. And I think with everything that you're publishing and sharing on social media and in your newsletter, um, you wouldn't be able to do that if some who do need specialized advice would pay for your services.
Hmm.
So you're also betraying, yeah, your subscribers, those who actually cannot afford.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. All these expectations.
expectations. That's a thing that they word into. In, I was reading an article year earlier, I don't know, it wasn't today or last week, and I'm mixing things up, that was talking about AI is eroding our, it was a question, but actually the article was proving that it's eroding our critical thinking.
Mm. Mm.
And that's a larger topic. Of course, it can connect to your book, but also was thinking that if somehow all these behaviors, people are also losing their common sense and
Mm.
having this tool that you can get
Mm.
infinite solutions, bad, ugly, good, then
Yeah.
they correlate, they transfer this to humans are supposed to be 24/7 available for me to, hey, Miriam,
Mm.
check my website. Because
Yeah. Why didn't they ask AI to check their website? Yes. Um,
because they are not as smart as you are. And
it's
that's
interesting because yeah, what I notice is you put a question or an idea into AI, and they usually say, "Oh yeah, that's a very good idea."
yeah.
So it's very supportive, which is nice in some regards. Um, but then, so for instance, when I had this hairball about professionalism and why corporate employees would have the need to feel professional. So I asked ChatGPT, I was like, okay, so here's what I understand, here's what I observe, here's
Hmm.
what I don't understand. Can you help me understand that? And then it said, oh yeah, this is a very good point. And then this is a very good point. So here's what has happened. And then in the early 20th century, this is what has happened. I was like, oh, thank you. So is there anyone who did research on that? And what books did they write? So, and then it really helped me to disentangle this hairball. Um,
Hmm.
but it would have not pointed me into the direction that something is not consistent if I hadn't asked.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and then,
context is
yeah,
everything, right?
yeah, which is then actually reassuring because it shows me, okay, I can collaborate with AI and still it's my book and my critical thinking that gets me to these points. And I'm not cheating, I'm just, yeah, being supported. Um, but then this also makes me think that maybe there will be another AI being developed who actually helps us with the critical thinking. Because at the end of the day, it's just another prompt, isn't it?
Yeah, but you are, to your point, are you thinking and using a tool to think, or are you delegating thinking into a tool?
Mm,
So the point is not if AI can or not critically think. Maybe today, no, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. But in the point, are we gonna let go of that?
mm. And I
It's
think,
like, for
yeah.
example, AI is like having thousands of freelancers working for you, right?
Hmm.
But the garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't know what's the right input, then the outcome is going to be bad.
Yeah.
But even though in any creative industry, the great editors, the great creative directors, the great movie directors don't necessarily are the ones who come up with the idea, but the ones
Hmm.
who can identify great ideas from shit
Yeah.
and they can select one for and they can nurture and help them grow.
Yeah.
They have that talent curation.
Yes.
And that's why I think that the you can ask the same prompt that I asked, but then what do we do with that outcome? How do we separate the good ideas from the bad? That's what most people are not ready to do that.
Yes. I'm reading Adam Grant's book Originals at the
Hmm.
moment, which is exactly about that. Um, and how come that sometimes we adopt original ideas and sometimes we are um, dismissing them or betting on the wrong horse. And I think you're right, or this article is right. I think it's too easy to get lazy in terms of critical thinking. Um, and I think that's what we are when we look at the at the content on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
it's more and more generic, and it's very well written generic.
but still generic. So it
It's still
doesn't.
generic, right? So it's just a nice paint. But when you look at it, okay, so what does it actually mean? There's a lot of fluff for very little substance, and I think that's where the critical thinking is missing because we cannot take at face value everything that AI is presenting us.
It's like taking pictures with a better phone that has AI and has better camera and whatever. The average picture quality has improved, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that people are taking great pictures. They're taking better
Mm.
quality pictures, which is different. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah,
They look less awful, but they're not necessarily what a shot. Yeah, you just
yeah,
capture something that you saw,
yeah,
but there's no angle, interpretation, whatever. What
yeah,
differentiates an artist from any
yeah,
regular guy with a camera.
yeah. And and I actually wonder whether it isn't a lost opportunity because we could become even better in critical thinking because of AI, because it would accelerate the moment where we have the critical thinking lens on. AI can help
Hmm.
us to accelerate that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when I put a prompt in and I get something that sounds generic, I was like, what's that? I know that you can do better than this because this doesn't make sense. And we were like, oh, that's a very good point. Let me revise that.
I'm an asshole. It should be.
And then, so I can be in conversation
Yeah.
and apply my critical thinking so that I get to the substance, essence of what AI is trying to sell me. And I think so it could actually be a teacher or an accelerator for critical thinking, but we have to put the effort in it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what makes the difference. It's easy to become lazy because
We
it
are
sounds
living in a lazy society because everything comes already ready for you to consume.
yes, and I think that's what they said in the 50s when Maggi first came, right? The instant soup,
Yeah.
right? Where suddenly the women the women were very proud of being lazy because it was a sign of luxury. We can afford to
Mhm.
cook an instant soup. So
But one thing is, if you, I'm not going to get into Maggie, that's not my,
yes, please.
but you can simplify certain aspects of your life, but that doesn't mean that everything should be as comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there are people that are
Mm.
saving time and then reinvesting that time in something of value, and there are simply saying, now I have more time, I'm going to enjoy doing nothing.
Yes. And I wonder whether it's the difference between it being easy and simple or easy and comfortable. Just because it's easy doesn't mean that it needs to be comfortable. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think and this again brings us back full loop to where we started, getting lost, right?
Mhm.
Um, what does it take? Because I think I can imagine that before Google Maps, people felt more comfortable getting lost or were more used to getting lost because it was kind of normal, okay, to ask people um, and to have the trust in oneself to find the way out. Whereas now we're so dependent on the phone and Google Maps um, that it might feel more uncomfortable. So what does it take now to lean back into this discomfort of mind bending and not understanding, of critical thinking, looking behind the fluff? It's maybe a muscle that
Definitely.
we need to
And
train.
building on that analogy is like for me, context is really important. When you're navigating Google Maps or whatever to go to a place, you're always taking into account what's the next move? Where do I need to turn left? Where do I need to stop? Whatever. So you forget where you're going. You're just following instructions.
Mm.
And I think we're getting into
Mm.
this moment in which we are into instructions. People want to, where do I need to turn left? And you cannot lead. I'm working with a team, no, with a couple that are on the same stuff, so they're not going to know which of them I'm talking about. Very senior executives of large corporations, right? And we are running a retreat which is about helping them to lead through uncertainty, and they want to see all the details of what's going to happen in those sessions before I tell them, no, that's not going to, first, it's against my operating way, but also like, what's the point? And also, like, we're going to see if we start with a plan, but then we're going to be pivoting because that's why we're learning how to lead in uncertainty. And you want to have it to be all predictable.
I love it.
Like, so we're starting from the wrong foot, if you know what I mean. But that's how
Yeah.
they operate.
And it's like what I
Tell me how
hear
to get
is
lost with an instructions.
exactly. And it's like, okay, everyone needs to learn how to feel comfortable in uncertainty, but I need to have the control over their
Yeah,
uncertainty. Mhm. They need to learn
yeah.
and I need to be in control. Yeah.
Probably you do the same, but I fight a lot when the leader, the CEO, whatever, say, "Hey, tell me what's going to happen." I say, "No, because you're going to go through the same experience. Why should you know what's the way out? We're getting to a maze altogether. Why should you know the way out?" And the other people know. So you need to go through the pain yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think,
And they don't
yeah,
like that. They say, "Well, but I need to. I'm the leader. I need to know." Like, who says so?
yes.
Not with me. Sorry. Like,
And I think this is the wrong sense of professionalism. Oh, the leader needs to know, the leader needs to go first and show the way.
the leader
Because
needs to
that's,
cheat because when they have the answer, they're cheating.
yes, yeah, or leading everyone over the edge, like the
Or they want
lemmings.
them to be the one who say, "Guys, there," instead of you helping them find the way. Right?
Yes, yes. Oh, I was
They
a
want
big
to have
fan
the
of,
Google map.
yes. I'm thinking of this video game Lemmings.
Hmm.
Um, when was it? 90, maybe in the 90s? There was you had to move the first lemming, and then all the other lemmings would follow. And if you take a wrong move, they all fall over the edge. So yeah. Um, so in the next 2 weeks, what's on
Yeah,
your what's
you're
on
gonna be
your
back
menu?
in Netherlands
Yes.
for good, or just to pack and then move into Australia for, you know.
I will spend the summer there for sure,
Okay,
and then I
love
will be
it.
back for the Australian summer, and then maybe move here.
Wow, it's great.
Yes,
Talking about
yes,
getting lost. Yeah,
yes. Because why not?
yeah. And that's a good way. Getting lost is not about getting lost completely. It's about embracing something new. So a move, even if you know where you're moving, you know it's gonna be a lot of new things to figure out.
And it's a good mu muscle to because we see more, we see more and
Mm.
realize and
Simple.
experience more when we allow ourselves to get lost a bit without the panicking. Because if we are panicking, we don't see anything.
No. Everyone
Any,
sees your panic, but you don't see where you are, right? That's the when you're
yeah,
lost.
yeah. Thank you, nervous system.
Awesome. So
Any ambitions for the next 2 weeks? regarding the book?
I don't know. As I mentioned, I have a lot of travel and stuff, so I'm super, super busy, and the book is there. I look at it, I carry with me here. I'm always trying to connect everything that happens. Could this add to the book? But I'm not actually doing too much writing.
Mm,
But that I mentioned this the previous call. Like sometimes we do a lot of progress in front of the computer typing, and sometimes we do a lot of progress not touching the computer.
that was my last 2 weeks.
So I'm into the
Yeah.
connecting the dots, or maybe disconnecting the dots because we're talking about like that, or creating new dots, whatever we want to call it. So then we find the path towards that.
Love that. Yeah. And I think I will be in reconnecting the dots. I found some new dots. I disconnected a few, and now being
Mhm.
back in Amsterdam, I will reconnect them.
And I'm thinking about this idea that you mentioned about the different meanings of debt. That's not always like necessarily bad, and also debt as an investment. So I'm gonna have debt with this person or this group because I'm going to invest somewhere else. So it's a lot of interesting.
Mm,
I'm gonna I'm gonna talk to my brother who's an economist to, talk about to get some inspiration.
great, great. I'm glad.
Awesome.
I'm glad.
So let's reconnect in two
Yes,
weeks and see
2 weeks.
where we are.
Yes.
Thank you.
And a little screenshot. 1, 2, 3.